Hey, this is Meyer-Robson, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my bestseller story, and it was a very, very bumpy ride. This is me, that's me there, and it's actually me after about a 22-hour journey to get to Romania for my 10-day book tour over there. I'm looking pretty happy, I'm pretty excited, and probably pretty tired, but it took me a lot to actually get here. This is by far not the beginning of my journey, and in fact, I actually probably started out much like you. If you're watching this video now, you are probably an author or you want to be an author, and you are probably at that point where you're like, I'm writing this really great book, I'm putting so much time into this. I did the same thing. I devoted myself, body, mind, and spirit to writing this really great book. It really transforms people's lives, called The Flow, 40 Days to Total Life Transformation. To my great joy, it even won a prestigious national award, Forward Magazine's Book of the Year award finalist, which is kind of a big deal, and you would think I'd have a pretty easy time marketing. As you're going to find out, not necessarily. It was also distributed by all of the right distributors, Ingram, Baker and Taylor, and basically if you're with the right distributors, traditionally what they tell you is you've got to be with the distributors to be able to get into bookstores, and that's going to help you to become a bestseller. Well, it's not that easy, as I found out. I basically could not get my book stocked on shelves. It had this beautiful shiny gold award sticker on it. It had tons and tons of amazing 5-star reviews on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. And honestly, in trying to talk to bookstore owners, most of them would just give me what I would call the stink eye and just send me on my way. They would act like I had just walked in something when I came in. And worse, a lot of bookstores would end up stocking my book, ordering directly from the distributor, but because of the crazy way that those things are tracked, as an author, I wouldn't even know. So I wouldn't even know what bookstores to even contact to do a book signing. So basically, I just kept feeling like I was sort of getting the stop sign, hitting a wall. I was so frustrated after doing this for about a year that I really almost gave up. I mean, I was at my wit's end. I was completely frustrated. I felt like a failure. I didn't want to tell anybody what my book sales really were because I was so embarrassed by it. And I almost gave up. And thankfully, because of my darling husband and my darling dog, I was encouraged to go on. Probably more by my husband, really. But he encouraged me. He's like, you can do this. You can figure out a way to make this work. So that caused me to sort of start asking some questions. I come from a marketing background, and I started to say, okay, well, why is this so hard? What's going on here that's making this so hard? What marketing tools do I need? How can I make this successful? What am I missing? How can I make this easier? I mean, and if you're at that place right now in your life, you're probably asking the same thing. Like, this should be easier. I've got a great book. I should be able to sell books and be happy. Like, you don't write a best-selling book, or you don't dream of writing a best-selling book to be frustrated, right? So I started to do some research, and I started to figure out why it's so hard for so many authors to succeed. There's a few sobering facts I figured out. According to BookScan, which is, it tracks most of the bookstore and online and any other, basically retail sales of books, the average U.S. book is selling less than 250 copies a year and 3,000 for its lifetime. Now, that's pretty low. 250 copies a year? That's not so good. So now you can start to see why, if you're having a hard time marketing your book, that may be what's going on. So basically, I had to ask, what would an average author make in royalties on one book? I wanted to know, what's the real picture here? So let's assume some facts. Let's actually just use you as an example. Let's say you make 10% on each book. Now, I know a lot of new authors, they only make 5%, but we'll be generous and say you're making 10% on each of your books. The retail price of your book, let's say, is $16.95. Pretty standard. So your royalty per book would be $1.69 a book. Doesn't sound horrible, but let's do the math. Let's actually figure out what's going on. So let's say you sell 99 books. So you make about $167 on those 99 books. You sell 500 books. So now you've actually doubled what the average is per year for US books. So that means you've probably busted your butt quite a bit, and you've sold 500 books. You make a whopping $845 for all that effort. Let's say you sell 1,000 books. Your big take-home pay is $1,690. Now, I'm pretty sure you could actually work at a fast food restaurant for more than that. um, let's say you sell 5,000 books. Like you have just somehow, crazy, you've really gotten them out there. You're actually making a whopping $8,450 total on all 5,000 of those books. And if you actually sell that many, you are in the top 2.5% for all authors. So you have struck gold. Now let's say you really defy all odds. I mean, you just go crazy. You sell 10,000 books somehow, like somehow, some miracle, you've gone through some wormhole and you sell 10,000 books. You have made $16,900 total. Now, I don't think you probably want to actually try to figure out what you're making per hour for all the time and effort and sacrifice and not going out on the weekends because you're writing and everything that you do to become an author, but it's pretty sad and it actually gets quite a bit worse. Let's say you are one of the unfortunate ones that get a net price contract, and these are coming in more and more now. This means you're actually paid on the wholesale price of the book, not the retail price of the book, which is a big, big difference. It means that for your $16.95 retail price, the actual wholesale price would be about $7.65, meaning that's what you're getting paid on. And that would actually make your royalties at 10%, which again is generous, just 76 cents a book. Now, let's say you just busted your butt and you sold 10,000 books. That means that you, this author who has killed yourself to make this all happen, have just made a total of $7,600 complete. That's what you've made. And you have just defied every odd. Not so good. So then you had to ask yourself, well, if the author, or you, are only making like 5 to 15%, 15% is usually for like celebrity, well-known authors, where does the rest go, right? Somebody's got to be taking the money. Well, there's basically 3 levels, as I sort of found out. 1, the publisher. Now, they make between 20 and 25% of the retail price. Now, I'm kind of okay with that because they actually do produce the book, so they have cost, They have actual costs of producing the book, the editing, all of the things that go into making a book. Now, the next level I start to get not as okay with. That's the book distributor. Now remember, at the beginning I said you kind of have to have a book distributor to be able to get your book distributed into bookstores, right? Well, they're the middleman. They take between 10 and 20% of the retail price of the book, and they do that just because they're going to list you in their catalog. Now, I can't go into this a lot here, but I do go into this in great detail on bestseller-in-one-day.com and within that program that I've created. But basically, just because you're listed in their catalog really doesn't mean you'll actually get any market support whatsoever. I mean, really none whatsoever. So if you want to learn more about that, I'll tell you how in a minute. The bookstore. Of course, the bookstore's got to make their money, right? Well, here's the thing. Bookstores won't even consider stocking your book unless you give them a 45 to 60% discount. So we're going back to that wholesale price, right? Large retailers actually ask for and get a 70% discount. Now, that's a lot, right? This actually means, because we need to put this in real dollars and cents, this means that if your book is a retail price of $16.95 and you quote unquote sell it, and you'll see in a second why I have to put that in quotes, to the bookstore for a discount of 45 to 60%, the bookstore's potential profit per book is $7.63 to $10.17. Like, that's a lot of money, right? So let me put this back in sort of contrast to what you're making. So your royalty with a regular contract is $1.69 per book. And if you have a net price contract, it's 79 cents a book. And you're the person that, of course, has done blood, sweat, and tears to create this book, right? But the bookstore's potential profit on your book is $7.63 to $10.17. And as I'm going to tell you in a second, they don't really have any risk for the situation. It actually gets worse. Bookstores don't actually buy your book. They can actually return them after a set period of time, often as little as 90 days. So they don't do any marketing for you, and the book sits on the bookshelf and nobody knows about it, and they can just return it. And then guess what? Your measly little royalties, they are taken right back out of your pocket. So your tiny little profit you thought you were making just went straight down the tubes. Now, this is not actually normal for retail. Okay, I don't know if anybody else has worked in a retail store, but I have. And just to put that in sort of contrast, if a department store buys 1,000 dresses from a designer, the department store is responsible for selling them. They have to do a clearance sale. They have to, do a ton of marketing to make people want to come in and buy the dress. But what they cannot do is send the dresses back to the designer and get a refund, right? The store is responsible for selling the dresses. But if a bookstore doesn't have to do any marketing for you, and they don't, and they won't, as I'm about to tell you here in just a second, and they can just return any books that don't sell when there's no marketing that's been done. So basically, when your book doesn't sell, which it would be a miracle if it does because they do so little marketing for you, then they can just return them. And there goes your tiny little residual that you were getting. To have your book receive marketing in a bookstore, and this was the thing that just astonished me, you actually have to pay for it. So when you go to a bookstore, sometimes you see on the shelf there's like books that have their covers facing out. Yeah, the publisher paid for that, or the self-publisher paid for that. When you see books with their own beautiful displays, the publisher or self-publisher has paid for that. If you see books on like a special or featured table, like right when you walk into like a Barnes & Noble, there's these big tables featuring something, that is generally a paid for feature. And books in the front window, absolutely a paid for feature as well. So it's not how good your book is. It's whether you're willing to pay for the marketing in the bookstore. And remember, the bookstore was making way more, like several times more than you on any book sold, but you are supposed to take your little royalties and pay for their marketing. So then I get a question a lot of times, and I myself ask this question: couldn't I hire a PR firm that would run a campaign for me that would hopefully sell a ton of books, right? Well, you can. You absolutely could. But here's what I found out. The average 3-month PR campaign costs $10,000 and doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't guarantee that you'll get booked on radio shows, TV shows. It doesn't guarantee that you'll sell a single book. It doesn't guarantee how many book signings that you get. Now, there are many really good PR firms out there, so I am not saying that this is all of them, but the vast majority that I have talked to and the vast majority of authors I have spoken to that have hired these PR firms are not seeing the kinds of results that they really, really would like to see. So let's just figure that out. At a normal royalty percentage of 5 to 10%, you'd actually have to sell between, and brace yourself, 5,885 and 11,764 books to break even. Break even. I'm not talking about a profit here. So that doesn't seem like the route to go. So obviously I wasn't going to succeed the traditional way, and maybe you found you aren't either. So we had to flip it on its head a little bit. So I started to put together a non-traditional way of doing this, and it really, really worked. It didn't cost me hardly anything. It cost me about $700 total, and that's only because I hired an assistant to help me. And I was able to sort of magnetize what I was doing. I was able to really drive people towards my book. And you can see right there I am in the number 1, 2, and 3 spots for different categories, which is very, very exciting. And I became what they call a mover and shaker on Amazon, which is, you can see me at number 3 on the movers and shakers list. And I stayed on those 2 lists for over a week, again, for almost no money whatsoever. It was the most successful thing I could possibly have done. I sold over 700 books in a day, and I sold 3,000 books in a week. So you can see that it actually worked remarkably well and was easy, and I was happy to do it. Even better, the next thing I knew, because I hit these bestseller lists, I became a media darling. I got booked on radio and TV shows galore. There's a lot more but I just can't fit them all onto that page. And I also, in this awesome twist of fate, I sold my foreign rights and I headed out on a 10-day book tour in Romania, which takes you back to the beginning of when I started this video. And you can see me there with my publisher and my translator and this just amazing people that I met. I was interviewed by the Romanian Oprah on their morning program. You can see my book in Romanian, which that's the craziest thing ever. If you can just imagine seeing your own book in a foreign language or speaking to a sold out room during a press event. It was just an incredible experience. I got to help people halfway around the world and I made friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. And this was all from this one day, this amazing campaign that cost me almost nothing. So, where will your bestseller journey take you? You can find out how you can start right there at bestsellerinOneday.com. You can just meet me over there and you're going to see the 8 steps that I took to being able to have all these wonderful things happen and finally feel like a success. So, I'll meet you over there.